Welcome to Booked, where two guys tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Livia Snedden.
And I'm Rob Olson. The book that we're going to be talking about this episode is That Left Turn at Albuquerque by Scott Phillips, a author who we haven't had on the podcast either as a review or a reading for, it's probably going to be a couple hundred episodes or something at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Whenever we were in Indianapolis is probably the last time, right?
Yeah, so we're talking 5 years ago, maybe.
About that.
Yeah. Before we jump into telling you what this book is about, I'm going to give you a quick bio of the author, Scott Phillips. He is a screenwriter, photographer, and the author of 7 novels and numerous short stories. His best-selling debut novel, The Ice Harvest, was a New York Times notable book and was adapted as a major motion picture starring John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton. He won the California Book Award and was a finalist for the Edgar Award, the Hammett Prize, and the CWA Gold Dagger Award. I definitely read Gold Digger in my head. Which is an entirely different award.
That's a different award. We'll cover that one next week.
Scott was born and raised in Wichita, Kansas, and lived for many years in France. He now lives with his wife and daughter in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes, he does. We were invited to the book release party, and I'm kind of bummed that we weren't able to go. It was kind of short notice, and I had work stuff and whatever. But Scott's a great guy. We've seen him read a few times now, and always fun. So we'll see if this book holds up to what our expectations are of Scott Phillips. Here is the synopsis for That Left Turn at Albuquerque. Douglas Rigby, attorney at law, is bankrupt. He just sunk his last $200,000, a clandestine loan from his last remaining client, former Big Shot TV exec Glenn Haskell, into a cocaine deal gone wrong. The lesson? Never trust anyone else with the dirty work. Desperate to get back on top, Rigby formulates an art forgery scheme involving one of Glenn's priceless paintings, a victimless crime. But for Rigby to pull this one off, he'll need to negotiate a whole cast of players with their own agendas, including his wife, his girlfriend, an embittered art forger, Glenn's resentful nurse, and the man's money-hungry nephew. One misstep, and it all falls apart. Will he be able to save his skin? Again, I didn't read the synopsis for this before I read the book, and I'm like, man, that's a lot farther than I was willing to go in talking about this book. So yeah. I think our job is done. Thanks, whoever wrote the synopsis for this book.
That's the thing. Like, I did read the synopsis before reading the book, so this time I was a little prepared for it. But, like, it's funny when you go in unaware and see what the synopsis decided to reveal, and it's like, oh, God. But, so I want to start off by saying we did review and really enjoy Scott's book Rake, which was about like an actor in France who ends up getting involved with a arms dealer's wife, and then a bunch of stuff goes on. Really, really entertaining stuff. Kind of that Hollywood dude trying to, dip his toe into organized crime to probably disastrous effects. Anyway, loved that book, and have been kind of waiting on a follow-up from him, and Scott hasn't had any books out in the last few years. So it's exciting that we're back into a Scott Phillips book, because that writing was just so like kind of quintessentially crime. It's obvious that it's a type of story that he's very comfortable writing. And the book starts off basically the way that the synopsis is talking about this, $200,000 clandestine loan. He's trying to invest some money that he maybe took without his client knowing about it. So Rigby on a payphone sets up a deal with someone, and then it's kind of entertaining because he was advised not to do the deal himself, to have someone else do it, so that there would be like some distance between him and the actual crime. So he finds someone that is a career criminal who he thinks, oh, this person's going to know what to do, gives him the money, tells him where the meetup is and everything. And that guy, Billy, goes out and meets up with the people with the drugs, who happen to be like a motorcycle gang. And it doesn't necessarily go according to plan.
Yeah. So Rigby gets screwed while he's screwing someone else's out of their money to, one of those like wrong at every turn kind of situations. So he has to kind of figure out how he's going to get out of this. The problem on the whole thing is he's already, a little backstory. Rigby had a partner in a law firm who I think was really the brains of the operation, like that carried it, who died. So eventually all of the clients left, and he only has one client left, and that's a rich man by the name of Glenn Haskell. He still keeps the practice going with this one client, mostly through the goodwill of his former partner, his deceased partner's wife, who also happens to be his girlfriend. So on the home front, he's married and has some kids, but his wife's real estate practice has taken kind of a nosedive too. So they're really pretty down and out at this point. So he has to come up with a creative way to make back this money, and hopefully some money on top of it. That's the thought was that he would borrow this money, he'd make a ton on this cocaine deal, once in a lifetime opportunity, and that would, get his family flush, and he wouldn't have to worry so much. Now he's still broke and out $200,000, and if he loses his last client, there will be no more money coming in. The beauty of this book, before we get any further into the story, is that there are no good people in this book, no good people of adult age in this book. Everybody has an angle, which is really, really wonderful. Well, you get a book like this, you expect there to be one or two bad apples kind of trying to do things and taking advantage of good people. Nope, everybody's kind of a piece of shit in this book. So
yeah,
the idea comes along that Glenn Haskell, the rich client who is a former the note says Hollywood casting couch inventor, which is pretty clever. But he's a guy who was responsible for a lot of TV shows through like the 50s and 60s, and definitely was probably the inventor of Me Tooing young actresses. Has a painting that he wants to donate to the school that he went to. So this guy is pretty old. He's in his 90s, and Rigby, along with Nina, the caretaker for Glenn Haskell, they hatch this scheme to make a forgery of the painting, keep the real painting themselves and sell it, and donate a fake painting to the school, essentially.
Yeah, so enter a couple other characters. Jerry Haskell is the relative of Glenn Haskell, who is, I think he's kind of like the only living relative of Glenn Haskell, so he's set to inherit basically anything that Glenn has when he dies. And so he's also kind of at the end of his rope as far as finances go, and is basically just holding out for his uncle. He's just waiting for his uncle to go so he can get that inheritance and kind of right the ship a little bit. So part of his interest in this story is because he wants the inheritance, and he thinks it's kind of crazy that that Glenn's going to be donating a painting to a school. He's got a say in what happens with this painting as well. Besides him, there's another character who is like a golf pro, and his involvement in the story is he's hooking up with Rigby's wife Paula, and he happens to have a grandfather who is a painter, and so he gets on their radar because they're trying to make fake paintings. So there's all of this, like Livia said, everybody's kind of got their own self-interest in the mix here, as far as like getting the money and getting one over on everybody else. And it's not a huge cast of characters, but there was enough where like there was a lot of moving pieces at the same time. And it's not like the Snatch movie level of like, like everybody's trying to get the one thing, but it's got a lot of interested parties all at once.
The thing that kept occurring to me through the course of reading this book is that it's only 288 pages, which is a relatively short book, but how much and how many people are involved in this book that doesn't even touch the 300 page mark. Like it's a bigger book than the pages kind of account for.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the story is, like Rob said, is I don't say complicated, but there are a lot of moving parts, which is what you said. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Enough so that, like I said, I kept thinking, like, man, there's an awful lot going on. How is any of this going to get resolved by the end of this book? But yet it does. And you know what I mean? Like, in a good way. I've read much longer books that have had less going on in them.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to Phillips' ability to write just really tight stories. There's nothing extraneous in this book. Anything that goes on is either entertaining or directly related to what's happening in the plot. Because, I mean, you have to admit, like, one of the best things about this book is that it's just casual and fun. So even though that there's elements of crime and bad things happening, and it gets pretty dark at points, it's a really entertaining book that's a lot of fun. And, like, you get to see the quirks of individual characters and sometimes a random comeuppance, or just, like, the way someone says something or an observation makes the book really entertaining and light, even though the content of the book can be pretty kind of heavy.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's definitely, for me, and you know, plot aside, I mean, it's very character driven. And like I said before, one of the things that I really liked about this was how everybody had an angle in this book. I mean, everybody had something shady going on. Like I said, with the exception of, like, the children in the book who are mentioned in passing, everybody has some kind of angle, and it's great.
Yeah, for sure. And it does harken back to just, like, thinking about the book Rake. Like, there was a lot going on in that book, and it was probably 200 pages. I think he's just really good at writing really tight, really lean stories that, like, don't fluff things up too much. And it was great.
So, one thing I found interesting about this, and you know, not the only instance we've seen, his name eludes me, but the guy's got his own show from Breaking Bad, you know, the sleazy lawyer.
The Better Call Saul thing?
Yes, Saul. Yeah, Saul Goodman, right? So it's not the first time we've seen a lawyer who's, you know, always kind of, you know, knee deep in some kind of criminal activity. And again, mostly because I didn't read the synopsis, but I found it interesting that it's a crime book where the main criminal, you know, air quotes, the main criminal is a lawyer. Like, I guess I didn't expect that. Yeah. I expected a lifelong con man, or, you know, some guy who just got out of prison and is going to make the score of his life to be the main character. Nope, it's an attorney, like a legit pass the bar, had clients, like does law stuff attorney. That's the main character, which I found to be, you know, kind of interesting.
Going into just a little bit of, I earlier just kind of very broadly said that I thought that the story was very entertaining and fun. So I want to give an example of, and I think Livius will agree with me on this. As we said early on, Rigby hires Billy to kind of be his bag man for this cocaine deal, which goes as wrong as it could possibly go. But Billy, being kind of stupid, still thinks he's owed, like, the money he was going to get paid for doing this deal, even though he basically lost Rigby his cocaine. And so Billy's pissed at Rigby for not paying him his fee for doing the job that he just completely botched. Rigby obviously is pissed at Billy for screwing everything up and costing him a couple $100,000. And so there's this, like, kind of ridiculous standoff between the two of them where Billy starts text messaging Rigby, like, in really poorly texted, like, all caps with like you're as you are, like, that kind of thing. Threats about, like, you better give me my money. And it's just hilarious to watch, like, this complete fool not realize how poorly he messed up a situation and still feel entitled to his payout. And then obviously completely justified. The lawyer is like, whoa, fuck you, buddy. You owe me money. So there's this back and forth that plays out throughout the book with those two characters. That is just comical because it's so ridiculous. And it's playing out, I would say, pretty true to, like, if non-criminals started doing crime stuff. Like, I feel like if I just started, like, doing weird drug deals and they went bad, this is how I would, you know, interact with the people who I was pissed off at, because I just don't know what to do. It just felt very, like, it hit close to home. Like this would be the shoddy criminal that I would be.
See, on the flip side, that just made me think of Better Off Dead, and the kid that Cusack owes $2 to the paper boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that kind of that level of. But yeah, no. Here's what I'll say about that. Yes, very funny, and it was just a great side story that was going on. Like Rigby's like, all right, I've got a plan. I've got to come up with a plan. All right, I've got a plan to get all this back, and he's got kind of this annoying guy just bothering him a lot, which I thought was really amusing and entertaining.
Yeah, it just injects like a feel into the story of like absurdity amidst all of this like serious stuff.
Yeah, I don't know how much else we can say about the book. I mean, you said it's tightly written. You are absolutely correct. There's not a lot of extraneous information given to you or words. I mean, it's tight, and I can't get over how long of a book. You know what I mean? It is at 288 pages. I'm still just kind of taken aback at how much is crammed into such a small space.
I would say,
like it didn't feel like stuff was crammed in.
Totally agree. I would say that one thing I'd like to point out is that there is a very strong vein of infidelity that's going on. We may have mentioned a little bit of earlier, but like everybody's screwing everybody basically at some point. Even the bartender woman who doesn't screw anybody is just obviously enamored by some people more than others, and like you could tell that if she had her way, she'd be going home with somebody. So there's a lot of crisscrossing of romances going on in the book, which is entertaining too, because like in some of them it's so obvious to like if someone's stepping out on their wife, it's so obvious to the wife that she just like is it's just a part of life. She's not even mad about it anymore. But the guy thinks he's like completely, she's completely in the dark about it. So it's a strong presence, and it's just really funny. And it ties in nicely with Glenn Haskell's kind of, every time he's talking in part of the book, he's talking about some like young actor that was a conquest on his casting couch at some point in his life. And there's just a whole lot of like hooking up going on.
I mean, and Haskell obviously is also not a good guy, but God damn it, he's entertaining. Like there's so many entertaining characters in this book.
Yeah, because he's got just little bits here and there, and like the only thing it seems that he talks about is what girl he banged when. Which, if I was like 80 years old, that's pretty much what I would devolve to as well, I believe.
Yeah, so keep listening, guys, because eventually
40 years from now, this is going to be an entirely different podcast.
For sure. So I'm just going to go into my wrap up, if that's cool with you.
Please.
All right. So I mean, I think everyone knows where this is going. Hugely entertaining book, fast paced, but so much going on, and done well. I don't know that there are any real like loose threads. I'm pretty sure this all came together really cleanly, and it's a crime novel that. So Rob mentioned it's not like the movie Snatch, right? Because we've seen that movie and or stories like that a bunch of times where everyone's after the same. It's like a heist book. This is not. This is not that. I mean, I don't know what genre of crime this would be. But it's definitely different than most of what's out there. For me, really, the characters are what drove it home. Really enjoyed that everybody's a bad guy, at least to some extent. Although, again, most of them don't think they're a bad guy. They're just doing what they need to do. This was a lot of fun, and my combined average rating on this, based on audience, characters, language, narrative, pace, personal score, plot, and tone, came out to an 8.63.
Not too shabby. I was thinking about that when I was doing my ratings, because a lot of my ratings were in the individual categories, like 8 out of 10, 8 out of 10, almost all of them basically, except for my personal score being a 10 out of 10. And the reason is this, like, I don't think that you could ask for a better story than this without someone completely breaking the mold, if that makes sense. So I think the characters were like perfect but not earth-shattering. Same with like the language, the narrative. Everything was as good as you could expect it to be without being some sort of like unexpected new step. I think the book was great. Like I said, very light, very entertaining. It's obvious that Scott Phillips is just an excellent storyteller. He knows how to build compelling characters, and he keeps his narrative super tight. So it carries you on throughout the story pretty much effortlessly. I feel like I sat down. So I was reading this earlier than I usually start reading a book. I sat down, I read the first 25%, and I was like, all right, well, I'll pick it up tomorrow. The next day, I read 25%, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just kind of keep this trend, and I'll read it over 4 days. And on the third night, I accidentally read the whole second half. So it's definitely a book that carries you through very easily, keeps you entertained, and tells a great story. And we didn't talk about it. We're definitely not going to do spoilers for this because I don't think that, the story necessarily justifies doing spoilers. But the ending was something that I did not expect. And for a story that is so easy to follow and accessible, I kind of expected, the ending to go a certain way. And the fact that he subverted those expectations just made it better. So I can't think of really anything to criticize about this book. Scott Phillips just knocked it out of the park. And my overall score for this, 8.25.
For anybody who's not a mathematician, and I'm not, so I'm glad that this document does this all for us. The average for that is an 8.4375, which I'm now checking to see.
We liked it better than Elma.
Yeah, it's very different from the Deep, but has scored a little bit higher. I think maybe Alma's book just lacked the word cornhole.
Probably.
And that's probably, I'm thinking, where the difference comes in. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe that's not it. But
this is our highest rated book of 2020.
You say that, and when I look at the books that we have to read, I have some pretty high expectations. I wonder if and which one the first one will be to crack 9.
That'll be big.
That'll be big. So I like this so much better. So let's talk about the scoring system. We've got a few under our belt now. I can't envision an average of 10 for the two of us based on the scoring system. And I like that. If it happens, it happens. I mean, it happened, with Nadia Comaneci in the Olympics in like the 70s, right? Like they didn't even know how to put up a 10 because it had never happened before. So it certainly could happen. I mean, if it happens, right. I have a feeling I know which book it's going to be, and it's not coming up for a few months. But I'm just excited to see if and when someone cracks a 9.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't expect I didn't expect our new rating system to bring down the score, but I think that's kind of what it did, but in a more realistic way. Like when we were just out of 5, like when we just had one rating and it was out of 5, you didn't have a lot of room to move around. But with this, you can really break down like the goods and the bads and have a more like solid, like if you gave something a 3.5 star review 2 years ago, you'd feel kind of like bad about it. But here, if someone got, just over 7, you're like, all right, well, this makes sense for these reasons. So yeah, it is a little bit more of an honest, maybe true to life rating system.
Can I tell you the one category that I think will keep us from a 10, like forever? It's audience. It's audience, because you have to get to the point for a 10, it would have to be universal appeal.
Now, I'm gonna argue that.
Okay.
So what if my interpretation was this book is the perfect book for this specific audience, and therefore it's a 10?
Which is fine. I'm just going based on our guide, which says, is this the kind of book that anybody could pick up and enjoy?
All right.
So I'm thinking so so I'm thinking
painted myself into a corner on that one.
Sure. So horror, right? Like not everybody enjoys horror. There are people who, they have nightmares if they read scary books, or, they're afraid to be home alone. Not everybody enjoys books with sexual content in it. You know what I mean? There's a variety of I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying that's the one, because personal score, the plot can be perfect, the tone can be perfect, language, but audience is tough, man. I mean, especially because we do tend to read kind of genre specific books. Most of the stuff we read is a little darker. Most of it is crime, horror. There's been some kind of fantasy and sci-fi, some mainstream stuff, but by and large, it's a little more genre driven for us.
Oh, well, we can always we can leave it how it is and just let everybody understand that they're probably not going to get a 10, or we could always take a look back and retool the system at some point and see if there's something that we can do to make it better.
We could. Then do we have to retrofit scores too?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
So... I'm saying right now, if we change our system, it's from then going forward.
Can I... It's so cute to me how during this coronavirus epidemic, authors think that people will read more. And every time I see it, I'm like, oh, that's so cute. They think that if people are self-quarantined for a week or two, that they're going to pick up and read more books instead of just watch more Netflix. Are you on board with this? I mean, are you in agreement?
Yeah, but I will say that I was victim to that exact thought. There was a moment where I was like, oh, everybody's going to be stuck at home. This is really the time to push our podcast so we can recommend books to people. And then I was like, oh, fuck no. Even Livius is just going to be sitting around playing Call of Duty.
That's right. Livius is actually probably going to try to get... Livius is not getting out of work, unfortunately. But yes, there is some Call of Duty that needs to be played. Live. Breaking news. We have a request for a review. Should we do this over on the podcast?
I don't know what you're talking about, but sure.
So this just in. Paul Lubazuski just sent an email. Greetings. My name is Paul, unpronounceable last name, Lubazuski. I'm going with Lubazuski. Author of the horror comedy I Never Eat Cheesesteak and the urban horror A New Life. My new novel, Cult of the Gator God, is coming out on April 28th on 50/50 Press, which puts me on the publicity trail, and I was wondering if we could set something up. He did enclose an ARC, although it is in PDF format. I think we have to say no, since we're pretty much through June now, right, on the schedule?
Yeah, we are book solid. As much as Cult of the...
period. Solid. I just thought it was exciting because this never happens like while we're actually recording. So usually I wake up to something like this from some fevered authors at 3 a.m. sending out requests, or the nice folks from the big 5 publishers that keep sending us romantic comedies and stuff to review.
Here's what I will say. I opened up that PDF arc.
Okay.
It looks like the layout's pretty nice.
Oh, all right. So are we doing this then? Let's see.
No.
We're gonna review it. No, we're gonna review it right now.
Oh, we're gonna read the book. Let's see how many pages it is.
How many pages?
It is 200 pages.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Let's open with Drive. Cult of the Gator God. Advanced reader copy, not for sale. Ooh, it's really dense.
Yeah, but the layout looks nice.
It does look nice.
I'm looking in the acknowledgments to see if there's anybody whose name I know. Like, how did this person find out about us?
It's always an interesting question. So I'm going to say, sorry, Paul, we have months of stuff coming up. As a matter of fact, Rob and I, it took us a solid half an hour just to put everything in a way that we can do it from now till the middle of June.
Yeah.
But we did enjoy a nice cup of coffee. Rob had something weird. What did you have? Like Dr. Pepper and milk, right? Wasn't it the Laverne special?
I had what's called a Dr. Hansa, which is cold brew coffee, Dr. Pepper, and vanilla.
Yes.
Delicious.
Yes. So sorry, Paul, but if you're interested, Cult of the Gator God is coming out in just about a month on 50/50 Press. So let us know what you think of that.
Yeah, if you're
somebody
into
else read it, tell us if we should read it.
Yeah.
There, we'll do that. We'll outsource this review to somebody that can tell us if we should review it.
I'm going to do it one better. Someone else read it, decide we should review it, pledge $10 a month on Patreon, and then force us to review it.
What a great idea that is.
Paul could do this too. Paul. It's a terrible idea. I don't think people should pay for reviews. It's a terrible idea, but it's still kind of funny.
It is very funny. So next week, which is going to be a little early. I know that a lot of you are thinking like, oh, what do I get them for their anniversary? Their 9-year anniversary is coming up. It's in like 2 weeks. We had to move up our anniversary episode a little bit. So the next episode you'll hear will be a little early, but it's going to be our 9-year anniversary episode. I say this because if you're interested in getting yourself on the podcast, if you have well wishes or anything along those lines, you can phone them in like we do with every third or fourth episode. The phone number is 773-599-1057. And you can call in and leave your well wishes for the podcast, fun messages, whatever. We'll go through them. We'll select some or all or whatever of them to be on the podcast. So I'll give you that number again, 773-599-1057. I will say that I know we don't give that number out very often, but the other thing that we had to do last Wednesday was keep that number active by using it for something because it's been a while. So we'll post that in the book podcast listening group sometime this week too. So if you're interested, no one will answer that call. It doesn't go to an actual phone. You'll just be able to leave a voicemail message and wish your favorite podcast good things or bad things or whatever. Can't wait till Paul gets hold of that number and
lights us up.
Yeah, but either way, you guys can use that number anytime for anything really. So feel free.
Be sure when you're listening to the episode to have your booked anniversary episode bingo card out. You can see when at some point we can mark off when we mentioned that Livius only expected us to go 3 episodes.
Oh yeah, that's the part of the book podcast drinking game.
Yeah.
Just saying, we should do that. Okay, so we should design a drinking game that we play while we're recording this episode next week.
It'd just be all the tropes of shit. Like it used to be that we'd say "there it is" all the time. I know that was the
thing for a while. Yep,
that was a staple. Livius not thinking we'd get past 3 episodes is definitely one of the most common.
Mm-hmm. I would have to agree.
Yeah,
that's the thing, though. It never changes. Like at no point am I gonna have thought that we were gonna go to 4 episodes. So really, in perpetuity, it's always gonna be that 3 episode thing.
Yeah.
We'll lament podcasts that have come and gone during our tenure here in Podcastville.
Oh yeah, I guess the drinking game / bingo option will also include wondering where they went.
Yeah, that's true.
Our guests and stuff.
I already started, man. I started doing that. I looked up one of our frequent contributors the other day to see if I could find out what happened to him, and alas, I was unable to.
Yeah. I was thinking lately, and this is probably just like stuff that we'll talk about on the actual anniversary episode, but like of some of the things that have, like you said, come and gone in that time, and it's a little freaky when you think about it. So maybe we'll do a segment on things we've outlived.
That's Yikes.
Not like in a petty way, but like in a holy shit, I can't believe that happened way.
Yeah, so if you want to listen to us be full of ourselves for, an hour or so, that'll be our next episode.
Yeah, and then honestly, like Livius was mentioning before, we actually went to a physical location and sat down together and looked at a calendar and looked at the list of books and author interviews that we have locked in. This isn't even the ones that we were like hoping to do that fell through, but like just the ones that are locked in, and either we have copies of the books in hand or we have days and times for the interviews to happen. And it took us a while to just figure out how do we do all this in a way that we don't have to say no to something. So it's nice that we're at a point where that's the kind of content we have coming in, that we have like borderline too much. But I'm going to tell you, like at the beginning of last week, after we had that meeting, whenever that was, I was pretty stressed out the next couple of days because it's a lot.
It is a lot. I guess since we have some books in hand, I guess we can give listeners a little bit of preview of what's coming up. Do you think that's acceptable?
Totally.
All right. So although we do have some interviews confirmed and scheduled, I'm not going to talk about those, but I will give you some highlights of what you can expect in the upcoming week. So Providence by Max Berry, who very unfortunately just canceled his U.S. tour earlier today. We're really sorry to hear that. We were planning on going to see Max read in Chicago, but clearly that's not going to be happening. So maybe next time around. But his book Providence will be reviewed here. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying. Also going to be Grady Hendrix, by the way. Also going to be reviewed here shortly. The Girl in the Video, which is Michael Wilson's debut, right? It's his first novella. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, no? He's had short stories published, I believe.
Right.
But not...
Yeah, I think this is his first standalone thing. So, The Bank by Bentley Little. So we're going into that horror category, pretty deep there. Devolution by Max Brooks. Shakespeare for Squirrels by Christopher Moore. And The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And that's just into May, where we may or may not have to take a hiatus.
Right. Not just from all the work, but also if our vacations don't get canceled because of the coronavirus.
Yeah. So middle of May, I'm supposed to be heading for Paris for a week, like pretty much right on my return. Rob was going to be heading for an East Coast trip, which included a stop at a pretty big book conference that we're not sure is going to happen. So we'll see. But if that goes down, then we already have the backup plan for those weeks. So we're really into it this year, and sprinkled throughout there will be some interviews.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names because like they could always fall through, but there's 2 right now that I'm pretty excited about doing. There's several more that are in the negotiation process of figuring out days and times. So we're definitely ramping up our interview workload, whatever you want to say, for 2020. But here's what I'm going to say. This is an observation I've been making to people who are talking to me about the podcast, because every now and then you get a coworker that's like, "Oh, how's your blog?" And you're like, "Well, it's a podcast. This is 2020. You shouldn't be making that mistake." The publishing industry is taking podcasts much more seriously in the last probably like year than it has in the 8. So we're basically 8 years ahead of our time as far as
no kidding,
being taken seriously by publishers. And so they're reaching out to us with like big names now, just because they're like, "Oh, you have a podcast. This is the type of exposure we're looking for."
For sure, which is interesting. So podcasts are for people who like audio stuff, right? But it's harder to read. And there are people like you and myself who are not big fans of audiobooks, right? Like tougher to stay with, but you can listen to a podcast. We've had this conversation, right? Can I tell you today, so background for anybody maybe who isn't a long-time listener, I work in a retail store, like in a retail store with people all the time. And I know that sounds like, how the hell does he do that? Because he absolutely hates everybody and everything. That's all true.
That's where the
but I
hatred
do
comes
manage
from.
to both. Yeah, I do manage to put on a facade that I'm a nice, friendly guy. Today, I go to approach this woman just to see if she needs any help. We are also getting hit with a lot of business due to working from home and self-quarantining and all that stuff. And I don't, because I think she's on the speakerphone. I hear something coming from her shopping cart, which is something that people do in public all the time, which is maddening, right? Like someone talking on a speakerphone in public, right? Yeah. Except that I realize that I'm hearing someone do like a really bad Russian accent. And I realize that this woman is listening to an audiobook in public.
On speaker?
On speaker on her phone. Oh. Rob, she was in my store for over half an hour, and that thing was going the whole time.
That's like 3 chapters.
Maddening. Like, I don't even know how she could follow, because there's noises, there's people pushing shopping carts, there's conversations being had, so I don't even know how she could follow what is. Now, I'm a lot like that too. If I have to go in the grocery store for more than, just to run in and out and grab something really quick, I'll put on my headphones and either I'll listen to some music or I'll listen to whatever podcast I was last listening to, or I have a bunch of downloaded YouTube videos. So if I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to be here for half an hour, I'll put in headphones and kind of do that thing where I just ignore everybody and listen to my stuff, but I'm the only one that can hear it.
Yeah.
This bitch, half an hour, dude, walking around playing an audiobook. Like I said, I mean, like shitty fake Russian accents and, you know, someone trying to sound like a woman when clearly it's a guy reading it. I mean, it was brutal.
Wow. She's like, the entire world needs to hear this Sue Grafton book.
So at any rate, I guess pro tip, if you are listening to this podcast and you're in a grocery store or you're somewhere out in public, put your fucking headphones on or turn this podcast off.
So I will say that I do that exact same thing. If I'm shopping, I'm headphones in. I recently got, like, I leveled up a little bit because I was using the AirPods when they recently got the AirPods Pro, which are noise canceling. So not only am I listening to something, but I'm also cutting out all of the noise around me. So it is this like beautiful, like totally silent. The only thing I hear is my podcast as I'm walking around shopping. It's pretty great.
When you say your podcast, you pretty much only listen to books, right? So
it's literally my podcast.
You listening to yourself in public. So, which means when we were hanging out the other night, it was a lot like you just being by yourself because you were listening to the two of us talking. Only you were doing it live instead of some recorded version.
That's exactly right. I mean, I will say, like, I don't know if you do, but I do listen to the podcast for like quality assurance purposes.
Yeah,
I don't know if you do.
That's actually mostly what I do. In one post, I'll usually hit like the YouTube link because I get notified in YouTube and I'll skip around a little bit. Or I'll make a mental note of like, hey, how did that come off? Like, you know what I mean? Like this conversation, I may go back and, you know, and try to find it and listen to this conversation about us talking about listening to podcasts. And I'll listen for a few minutes. I don't typically listen to the whole thing.
I do full episode. Well, like, and especially interviews where it's like, how well did like Katsu, I've listened to Katsu. I've listened to a couple of times where I'm like, what could we have done better? Like, how did that go? What dumbass question did I not need to ask? Like those types of things.
I'll be honest, sometimes for those, because you and I are communicating behind the scenes, I listen and I wind up catching things that I didn't catch because I was busy researching something or typing something out to you where I'm like, did she say that? Oh, wow. I must have missed that the first time around.
Yeah. Well, now this is the part of the episode where we just talk about ourselves talking about things. So
there you go.
Everybody's clicking
levels
off.
Of inception. Yeah, well, they should. So that's really all I have. I know that we've got stuff for next week for the 9th anniversary episode. So again, we're doing it about a week early this time. Give us a call if you want to take a shot at being featured on the podcast. And I don't have anything else. Rob, you?
Shameless plug. Patreon.com/booked. You know, support us even at $1 a month. You get early access to episodes. Sometimes if I've got them edited like way in advance, you might get stuff a few days ahead of time, but you'll always have early access. You'll get access to our spoiler talks, where we kind of elaborate more on a book that we are reviewing. And at a certain level, $10 a month, you can actually tell us what book to read and review, and maybe even join us for that review. So patreon.com/booked and help a couple of brothers out.
I was just looking to see, because we have an interview coming up that's going to be like a week ahead of it getting published.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
the gears are turning.
You get the idea on that one. You may get one of our biggest interviews of the year, 4 or 5 days early, maybe.
Yeah. Who doesn't want that?
I don't know. Who doesn't? So, all right. That's it. I'm going to call it on this one. Come back next week, 9th anniversary episode. Until then, I'm Livius Nedden.
And I'm Rob Olson. Keep reading.